Unfortunately, we're still discussing terrorism, this time in Turkey. Turkish forces struck Islamic State targets in Syria and Iraq, killing some 200 in response to Tuesday's suicide bombing in Istanbul, which was blamed on the group. It comes as the Kurdish PKK launched another deadly attack in Turkey's Restiv southeast. I-24 News correspondent Uri Shapira has more on Ankara's two-pronged military campaign.
2 days after a horrific bombing attack that killed 10 Germans in the heart of Istanbul, Turkey has revealed the steps being taken against the extremist jihadist group, the Islamic State. According to Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu, Turkish tanks and artillery killed at least 200 IS fighters in Syria and Iraq in 2 days.
Our struggle will continue until the terrorist organization Daesh is completely wiped out from our borders in the short term, as long as they continue to defame the dignity of Islam in the region and in the world.
This may be a shift in Ankara's policy. Turkey launched its campaign against terrorism in the region last July, but so far mostly targeted the Kurdish Workers' Party PKK's militants, which have a long conflict with the Turkish authorities. Earlier Thursday, a truck bomb attack hit a police station near the southeastern city of Diyarbakir, leaving 6 people dead, including a baby and 2 children. Officials blamed the PKK fighters for carrying out the attack. Tuesday's attack also brought back the tension between Ankara and Moscow. Davutoglu accused Russia of protecting the Islamic State in Syria by bombing opposition forces fighting the group rather than IS fighters.
They should hit Daesh targets instead of civilians. What I mean is clear. I'm talking about Russian air forces. 90% of the operations they carried out are against the Syrian opposition or civilians, but not against Daesh.
Russia's foreign ministry said Thursday that one of the 3 Russian men arrested in Turkey after the deadly attack in Istanbul was suspected of having links to Islamic State, and that such extremists feel comfortable in Turkey. And though it's not sure how the Turkish involvement in Syria and Iraq will evolve, it seems likely that a two-front operation is underway.
Yes, and joining us now on Skype from Istanbul is journalist Laura Wells. Laura, good evening. Thank you for being with us.
Good evening. Thank you.
Laura, we know that a curfew was imposed on Diyarbakir and several other towns and cities as part of a security crackdown, but curfews have been criticized for hurting civilians as well.
Well, absolutely. This has been going on for many months now, especially in the past month. It has been even more severe. There have been reports of no internet service, no cell phone service. Many reporters have not been able to enter these areas because barriers have been put in place. About 200,000 people in the southeast have fled their homes to escape the region and the fighting there. And also a group of 1,100 academics from within Turkey and outside of Turkey, including Noam Chomsky, has criticized the government and asked for them to stop all operations.
And Laura, we know that there have been clashes also between PKK separatists and the Turkish army in recent months, but how much has this violence escalated in this past week?
Well, it really has been escalating, I would say, especially in the past month with this car bomb attack and then ensuing gunfire and rocket launchers. It's really turning a lot of the Turkish mentality against Kurds and especially the PKK. I think it's actually getting more of the population to support the government because 1 police officer was killed, but 5 civilians, including 1 child and 2 babies. If you look at photos and videos of this police complex that was targeted, it was destroyed as well as other residential buildings and stores in the area. They've said, according to the army, that about 500 PKK militants have been killed since December 15th and about 3,000 since July. Also, the Turkey Human Rights Association has said that about 400 civilians have been killed since August. This is a very big number. Sorry, I'm going to recant. That's about 170 civilians since August. And then also you have 250 security forces, Turkish security forces, have been killed since the summer when the fighting really intensified between the Turkish army and the PKK when the ceasefire fell apart.
Yes. Laura Wells giving us the picture from the ground in Turkey. Thank you very much for that. And I'm still joined in the studio by Amir Oren. Amir, President Erdogan has made repeated claims against the IS, blaming them for several terror attacks. And he said today that he does not differentiate between terror groups, namely the PKK, the Kurdish, and the Islamic State. How much does that tell us about the way he intends to fight terrorism in Turkey?
Well, if you spend some time, any time with President Erdogan, in addition to watching him on TV, you know that he is extremely arrogant. And of course, one example was almost 6 years ago during the Mavi Marmara flotilla. And he had to come down from his high horse because for all of his arrogance and aura of invincibility, he has been shown to be very vulnerable. Erdogan himself, as well as Turkey. And the Turkish people, even though they do not support the PKK, they do not support terror at all, start looking at Erdogan as someone who cannot deliver the goods. Now, you mentioned earlier that Turkey is now leading a two-pronged war. It's really a three-pronged war because the one with Russia, or at least a three-front war, the Russian front is even more ominous. And we tend to forget the incident with downing the Russian plane, but Vladimir Putin is calling the shots there. And Erdogan will have to play along with Putin, as well as with the Americans who are his allies in NATO, but nevertheless, if they want the border with Syria totally shut, so that there will be no movement of goods, including oil, no movement of money, no movement of people, Erdogan will have to play along if he wants to have support for his attacks against the PKK and the IS. And this is going to lead to some reinvigorated efforts to have a political end to the crisis in Syria.
Well, Amir, you're staying with me first of all, but you mentioned the three-pronged war. Another area I want to touch on now is also suffering a heavy war for a lot of time. A second UN convoy of about 58 trucks arrived in the besieged Syrian town of Madaya, where thousands of civilians are trapped and where people have reportedly died of starvation. Aid lorries also reached Foua and Kefraya, two northern towns where the humanitarian situation is also set to be critical. People have reportedly been eating grass and pets to survive.